Dad, marry her. 4 words from a 4-year-old girl. Ethan Walker's coffee cup stopped halfway to his mouth. The entire coffee shop fell silent, and Sophia Bennett, billionaire, CEO, woman on the cover of every major business magazine in America, turned around and stared at the little girl like she'd just been struck by lightning. Nobody moved, nobody breathed, and in that suspended, impossible moment, something cracked open inside 2 people who had spent years building walls so thick they forgot doors existed. If this story already has you feeling something, please subscribe to this channel, hit that notification bell, and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Now let's go back to where it all really began. The day his daughter changed his life forever started, the same way every other day started. With burned toast, Ethan Walker stood at the kitchen counter in his apartment on the northwest side of Chicago, scraping black crumbs into the sink while simultaneously trying to pour orange juice, tie his left boot, and not spill coffee on the work order he'd printed out the night before. It was 6:47 in the morning. He had 13 minutes before Mia needed to be in the car. 13 minutes. He'd gotten good at 13 minutes. After Claire died, he'd gotten good at a lot of things he never asked to learn. Dad, Mia's voice came from the hallway. She was 4 years old, and she spoke with the kind of certainty that made adults stop and question everything they thought they knew. I'm in the kitchen, Bug. Her footsteps padded across the floor. She appeared in the doorway wearing one pink sneaker and holding the other in her hand, her dark hair in a lopsided ponytail that she'd clearly attempted herself. Ethan looked at her. Did you try to do your own hair again? She lifted her chin. It looks good. It absolutely does not look good. Dad, Mia. She walked over and sat on the kitchen chair, extending her foot toward him like a queen waiting for her shoe to be fitted. He crouched down and tied her lace, and for a moment, just a moment, he let himself breathe. She smelled like the lavender soap Claire used to buy. He'd never switched brands. He didn't think he ever would. Dad, Mia said, watching him finish the bow with a precise double knot. Are we going to the coffee place today? Ethan stood up. After I drop you at school, I've got a job across town. Bennett Building? He paused. How do you know about the Bennett Building? She shrugged the way 4-year-olds shrug, like the universe simply delivered information to them, and they had no obligation to explain where it came from. You said it last night on the phone. You said the lady who owns it is very important. She is very important, more important than you. Ethan picked up his work orders and folded them into his jacket pocket. He didn't answer right away. Not because he needed to think about it, but because there was something in the question that landed in a strange place in his chest. Different kind of important, he finally said. Mia considered this. Okay, she said, and she hopped off the chair like the matter was completely settled. The Bennett Global Headquarters was 42 floors of glass and ambition in the heart of Chicago's business district. Ethan had worked in buildings like this his whole career, not as someone who made decisions, but as someone who made sure the decisions could be made. If a circuit failed, he fixed it. If a pipe burst at 2 in the morning, his phone rang first. He was the person who kept everything running so that people like Sophia Bennett never had to think about what it took to keep everything running. It was honest work. He had never once been ashamed of it. He checked in with the building manager that Monday morning, a tired man named Gerald, who immediately launched into a list of complaints before Ethan had fully stepped through the door. Third-floor ventilation is making a sound like a dying cat, Gerald said, handing him a clipboard. 15th floor bathroom has a pressure issue, and Miss Bennett's office, don't laugh, her window won't close all the way. 42nd floor. You'll need to go up there personally. She specifically requested it. Ethan raised an eyebrow. The CEO of a billion-dollar company specifically requested a maintenance man. Gerald gave him a look. She specifically requested a maintenance man who doesn't waste her time talking. Apparently, the last guy spent 20 minutes explaining the mechanical theory behind window compression. She had him escorted out. Ethan took the clipboard. I'll start at the top. The elevator opened on the 42nd floor to something close to silence. Not the silence of emptiness, the silence of control. Every surface in the executive suite was deliberate. Clean lines, quiet colors, The kind of space that told you, without a single word, that the person who occupied it did not tolerate disorder. A woman at the front desk, young, precise, with the look of someone who had learned to anticipate problems before they became problems. When he stepped out of the elevator. "Maintenance?" she said. "Yes, ma'am, here for the window." "She's in a call. Shouldn't be more than 10 minutes. I'll let her know you're here." Ethan nodded and waited, holding his toolbox, looking out at Chicago spread below him like a map of everything he'd never owned. He wasn't bitter about it. He genuinely wasn't. He'd made peace with the shape of his life. It was small, it was quiet, it was real. And on the days when it felt like too much, when the empty side of the bed was too loud, and Mia asked questions about her mother that made him have to leave the room for a minute, he reminded himself that the shape of his life contained the one thing in it that mattered most. His daughter. The office door opened. Sophia Bennett walked out mid-sentence, phone pressed to her ear, a tablet in her other hand. And she crossed the space between her office and the reception desk with the economy of movement that belongs to people who treat time like a resource they're always running out of. She was talking about quarterly projections. She was talking about a presentation in Singapore. She was telling someone named Derek that no, she would not be adjusting the timeline, and Derek needed to understand that the timeline was not a suggestion. Then she stopped, because Ethan was standing there. Just standing there, quietly with his toolbox, waiting. Something flickered across her face, something so fast he almost missed it. Something that wasn't impatience. He couldn't quite name it. She held up one finger at him, the universal signal for one moment, and finished the call in under 90 seconds, cutting Derek off mid-protest with the kind of precision that suggested she'd had to cut many Dereks off before. She hung up. She looked at him. "The window," she said. "Yes, ma'am. It won't fully close. There's a draft coming through the left side. I'll take care of it." She watched him for half a second longer than seemed strictly necessary. Then she walked back into her office and held the door open. "Then come fix it," she said. The window took 11 minutes. It was a compression issue with the seal, exactly what Gerald had suspected, and Ethan worked quietly and efficiently, the way he always did, not filling the silence with commentary or explanation. Sophia sat at her desk during those 11 minutes. And in those 11 minutes, Ethan noticed 3 things. The first, she had not eaten breakfast. He could see it in the way she held herself, that particular tension that lives in the shoulders of people who run on caffeine and willpower and forget that the body eventually sends a bill. The second, on the corner of her desk, nearly hidden behind a stack of files, was a small framed photograph. He couldn't see who was in it, but it was old, the colors slightly faded, and it sat in a cheap plastic frame that looked out of place in a room where everything else had clearly been chosen by someone with very expensive taste. The third, when her phone didn't ring for 3 straight minutes, she exhaled. Not a sigh of relief, not relaxation. It was the exhale of someone who had forgotten they were holding their breath, and the moment they let it go, something behind their eyes went briefly, quietly sad. He sealed the window. He tested it, closed and locked it. Opened it again, closed it again. "It's done," he said. She looked up from her screen. "Already?" "Yes, ma'am." She was quiet for a moment. The last contractor took 3 hours and left a scratch on the glass. "I'm not him." Something shifted at the corner of her mouth. Not quite a smile, but close. "No," she said, "you're evidently not." He picked up his toolbox. "Miss Bennett, you might want to get something to eat." "It's almost 11. She looked at him. The expression on her face was not offense. It was something stranger than offense, something closer to surprise that anyone had noticed. "I have a meeting at 11, she said. "That's not what I said." He walked to the door. "I'll submit the work order to Gerald," he said. "Have a good day." He left, and Sophia Bennett sat at her desk for a long moment after the door clicked shut, staring at the space where he had been standing. 3 weeks. That's how long the contract with Bennett Global ran. 3 weeks of Ethan rotating through the building ventilation systems, elevator maintenance, fire suppression testing, a cascade of small problems that added up to a steady paycheck and a reason to be there every other day. He saw Sophia in passing. She was always moving, always between meetings, always mid-conversation, always managed and scheduled and surrounded by people who wanted pieces of her. She never stopped to talk to him. Not really. Until the Wednesday morning 3 weeks in, when he ran into her in the lobby. Not figuratively, literally. He came around the corner from the maintenance corridor, carrying 2 fire suppression inspection reports, and a cup of coffee, his second of the day. Because Mia had been up at 5 with a bad dream, and he'd been operating on insufficient sleep ever since, and Sophia came through the side lobby door at exactly the wrong moment. The coffee went on his jacket, not on her. He managed, through some miracle of physical coordination, to tip the cup inward rather than outward. He stood there, soaked, looking at her. She stood there, keys in hand, looking at him. "I'm sorry," he said. "You didn't hit me," she said. "I know, but I startled you. You startled me. That's different." She looked at his jacket. "Is that your only jacket?" He looked down. "For work, yes." She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "Gerald can—" "I'll handle it," he said. "It's fine. It's not fine." "Miss Bennett." He looked at her directly, not rudely. Just directly. With the particular calm of a man who had learned that most crises were manageable if you simply didn't panic about them. "It's a jacket. I've had worse mornings." She went very still. And then, for the first time since he'd met her, Sophia Bennett laughed. Not a polished laugh, not a press event laugh, a real one startled out of her like it surprised even her. "I'm sure you have," she said, and that should have been the end of it. Except Mia was in the lobby too. He'd brought her that morning. The sister had canceled last minute, and school didn't start until 9, and he'd already cleared it with Gerald that she could wait in the lobby break room while he finished his inspection. She was sitting in one of the chairs with a book in her lap, the kind of serious, concentrated reading that only 4-year-olds who are pretending to read can achieve. But she'd heard the laugh, and she'd looked up. And now she was standing 3 feet away, staring at Sophia Bennett with the unblinking attention of a small person who has just observed something extremely interesting. "Mia," Ethan said carefully, "go back and sit down." "Is that your daughter?" Sophia asked. "She is." "Mia, say hello and then go sit down." "Hello," Mia said. She did not go sit down. Sophia actually crouched, in a tailored suit, right there in the lobby and looked at Mia at eye level. "Hi," she said. "What are you reading?" "I'm not reading," Mia said. "I'm looking at the pictures and making up a better story." Sophia blinked. She paused. "That's actually what most writers do." Mia nodded, satisfied. "My dad tells good stories." "Does he? He made up a whole kingdom once, with a queen who could turn rain into gold." Sophia looked up at Ethan. Ethan looked at the fire suppression reports in his hand, like they were suddenly the most important documents he'd ever seen. "Is that so?" Sophia said. "She remembers everything," Ethan said flatly. "It's a known problem." Mia looked at Sophia with those dark, serious eyes. "You're pretty," she announced. "Thank you," Sophia said, clearly startled. "But you look tired." Ethan started. "She does," Mia said reasonably. "She has the same face Dad has when he stayed up too late worrying." The lobby was quiet, except for the distant sound of elevator doors opening. Sophia stood up slowly. She looked at Ethan. He had the expression of a man who was calculating exactly how many exits a lobby had and whether any of them were close enough. "Worried about what?" Sophia asked Mia. Mia tilted her head. "About the things you can't fix," she said, like it was obvious. Like everyone knew this. And then she turned around, walked back to her chair, picked up her book, and resumed not reading with perfect composure. Ethan pressed his eyes closed for exactly 1 second. Then he looked at Sophia. "I'm sorry," he said. "She has no filter." Sophia was quiet for a moment. "She's right, though," she said, so quietly he almost didn't catch it. And then she straightened, and the professional composure came back like armor clicking into place, and she nodded at him once. "Get a new jacket," she said. "Send the receipt to Gerald." She walked away, and Ethan stood there in a coffee-soaked jacket, watching her go, feeling something in his chest he hadn't felt in 3 years. A small, inconvenient disturbance, like a window with a broken seal. Like a draft coming through a crack he hadn't known, was there. It happened on a Saturday. It was not supposed to happen on a Saturday. Saturdays belonged to Mia, pancakes, the park, whatever book she wanted read to her 3 times. The sacred, uninterrupted routine that Ethan had built around her, because routine was the thing that kept them both from feeling how much was missing. He took her to a coffee shop, the one on Wicker Park, with the good hot chocolate and the window seats where Mia liked to watch people walk past and invent stories about them. It was a ritual, small, ordinary, entirely theirs. He was standing at the counter, waiting for their order, when the door opened behind him. He didn't look. He heard the shift in energy before he saw the reason for it. Murmurs, the specific quiet that happens when someone notable enters a room. He turned. Sophia Bennett walked into the coffee shop in a pale gray coat, no bodyguard, no assistant, no entourage, just herself, looking like she was trying to move through a Saturday without anyone recognizing her. Which was not going particularly well, given that at least 4 people had already pulled out their phones. She didn't look at him immediately. She was looking at the menu board, reading it like it was the most complicated document she'd encountered all week. And she was alone, completely alone. And standing slightly apart from the other people at the door, in a way that wasn't rude, it was just the way someone stands when they've spent so long being separate from a crowd that they no longer know how not to be. Ethan turned back to the counter. He collected their drinks. He went to find Mia. She had, of course, already found Sophia. He saw it happening from across the room, his daughter, in her orange coat, standing directly in front of one of the most powerful women in American business, having an apparent conversation. Sophia was crouching again. She kept doing that, he noticed, actually getting to eye level, rather than talking down to children from above, and Mia was saying something with great seriousness. He crossed the coffee shop in 11 steps, and he makes the best pancakes, Mia was telling her. But today we got hot chocolate, because it's a special Saturday. What makes it special? Sophia asked. Dad said I could pick anything I wanted. That sounds like a good dad. He's the best dad, Mia said, with the absolute unqualified confidence of someone for whom this was simply not up for debate. Ethan arrived. Mia, he said. Both of them looked up at him. Dad, Mia said. Look who's here. I can see who's here. It's Sophia, I'm aware. She was alone. She looked sad again. The coffee shop had gone very quiet. Or maybe it just felt that way. Sophia stood up. She's not wrong, she said. And there was something in her voice that was trying to be light, but wasn't quite making it. I apologize, Ethan said. She approaches strangers. I'm working on it. Don't, Sophia said quickly. Then she seemed to catch herself. I mean, she looked at Mia. She's very direct. That's one word for it, Ethan said. Mia had been looking back and forth between them. With growing intensity, with the expression of a 4-year-old who has processed a situation and reached a conclusion. Ethan saw the expression. He knew that expression. He opened his mouth, not sure what he was going to say, only knowing it needed to happen before she said whatever was forming behind those eyes. He was too slow, Dad, Mia said. Her voice was clear. Loud enough for the table nearest them to hear. Loud enough for the couple by the window to look over. Loud enough that the barista paused in what she was doing. Marry her. The world stopped. Ethan's coffee cup stopped halfway to his mouth. Someone at a nearby table made a small, involuntary sound. Sophia went completely still. Ethan looked at his daughter. Mia looked back at him with perfect, unruffled calm. What? He said. His voice didn't sound like his voice. Marry her, Mia repeated, with the patience of someone explaining something obvious to someone slow. She's lonely. You're lonely. You should get married. That's how it works, she said. When 2 lonely people find each other, they stop being lonely. The silence in the coffee shop was absolute. Sophia's face was unreadable. Ethan set his coffee down on the nearest surface because he was no longer confident in his ability to hold it steady. Sweetheart, he said, crouching down, getting to eye level, because some conversations required getting to eye level. That's not how this works. Why not? Because he stopped. Because you can't just tell people to get married. I didn't tell her, Mia said patiently. I told you. Mia, she smiles differently. When you talk to her, his daughter said simply. Like how Mom smiled at you. Everything in Ethan Walker's chest went very still. He couldn't speak. He looked at Sophia. Sophia was looking at Mia. And on the face of one of the most controlled, composed, powerful women he had ever encountered, there was an expression he could only describe as undone. Your mom sounds like she was wonderful, Sophia said softly. To Mia, not to him. Mia nodded. She taught me how to see things. What things? Mia glanced at Ethan, then back at Sophia. The things people try to hide, she said. Nobody moved for what felt like a very long time. Then the barista called a name for an order, and the spell fractured, and the coffee shop returned to itself, conversations resuming, phones being put away, the ordinary machinery of a Saturday morning starting back up. Ethan straightened up. He couldn't look at Sophia directly. He looked at a point somewhere near her shoulder. "I am very sorry," he said. "She doesn't. Please stop apologizing for her," Sophia said. Her voice was quiet, not cold, the opposite of cold. Like the warmth was the problem, like there was more of it than she knew what to do with. "She's 4 years old," Ethan said. "I know how old she is. She doesn't understand what she's saying." Sophia looked at him. "Are you sure about that?" she said. He didn't answer. Ethan, the first time she had used his name, not Walker. Not maintenance. Ethan. And something about the way it sounded in her voice was different from the way it had always been in his own head. "When's the last time someone asked you how you were doing?" "Not Mia." "Not the job, you." He didn't answer. "That's what I thought," she said quietly. Mia was watching them both with the focused attention of a small scientist observing a very interesting experiment. "There's a table by the window," she announced. "It has 2 chairs. And 1 little chair. For me," she pointed. There was in fact a table by the window with exactly that configuration. Ethan looked at it. He looked at Sophia. She was looking at the table too. "You don't have to," he said. "I know," she said. She picked up her coffee from the counter. She'd placed her order in the chaos, and he hadn't even noticed, and she walked to the table by the window and sat down. Mia made a sound of profound satisfaction. She took Ethan's hand and pulled him toward the table. "Come on, Dad," she said. "We're not being lonely today." They sat for an hour and 17 minutes exactly, though Ethan would not know that until later, when he found himself replaying every minute of it. Sophia drank her coffee and ate half of Mia's chocolate chip muffin, because Mia had decided with great authority that Sophia needed to eat, and Sophia had not argued. Which struck Ethan as significant, given how he'd watched her run circles around everyone in her office. Mia talked about her kingdom stories. Sophia listened, like they were the most important thing she'd heard all week. Ethan said very little. He watched. That was what he did. He watched and he fixed things, and he noticed what others ignored. And what he noticed now, sitting at a table in a coffee shop on a Saturday morning he had not planned for, was this. Sophia Bennett was not the woman he had seen in the building. Or rather she was, but she was also someone else entirely. She was someone who, when not performing power, became very quiet. Very still. Someone who laughed at Mia's rambling stories, with a laugh that started in her eyes before it reached her mouth. Someone who wrapped both hands around her coffee cup like she was cold, even though the coffee shop was warm. Someone who looked, more than once, at the empty chair beside her, like she was used to empty chairs. "Can I ask you something?" he said, the first full sentence he'd directed at her in 40 minutes. She looked at him, steadied herself, very slightly. "You can ask. You could have left," he said, after Mia said what she said. "You could have laughed it off and walked out and found a different table." "Why didn't you?" Sophia was quiet for a moment. She looked at Mia, who had... "Because she reminded me of someone I used to be." Sophia said it so quietly that Ethan almost asked her to repeat it. But he didn't, because he heard it. He heard every word of it, and something in those 7 words landed in a place inside him that he'd kept locked for 3 years. Mia looked up from her menu book. She looked at Sophia. She looked at Ethan. Then she went back to her menu like a conductor who had set the music going and was now content to let it play. Ethan turned his coffee cup in his hands. "Someone you used to be," he said. "Before I figured out that being needed was safer than being loved." Sophia said it like she'd rehearsed it, or maybe like she'd never said it out loud and was discovering it was true at the exact moment the words left her mouth. She looked down at her cup, safer and lonelier, but I was good at that trade-off. "And now?" She looked at him. "Now a 4-year-old just proposed on your behalf in a public coffee shop, and I'm sitting here drinking coffee instead of running. Which tells you something. It tells me your judgment might be compromised," Ethan said. She laughed, again, that real laugh, the one that surprised her. "Maybe," she said, "or maybe your daughter is the most honest person I've met in 15 years. Mia didn't look up, but she smiled. She absolutely heard that. They walked out of the coffee shop at 11:43. Ethan knew, because he checked his watch, not because he wanted to leave, but because wanting to stay was the kind of thing that required monitoring. On the sidewalk, Mia took Sophia's hand, just like that. No warning. She simply reached up and took it. The way children claim things they've decided belong to them. Sophia looked down at the small hand in hers. Something moved across her face. Something quick and fragile, like a light turned on in a room that had been dark a very long time, and the sudden brightness was almost painful. Ethan watched it happen. "Mia," he said, voice careful. "Sophia has to go." "I know," Mia said. She looked up at Sophia. "Will you come back?" Sophia crouched, eye level again. That thing she did, that thing no one else did, that habit of actually meeting Mia where she was, instead of looking down at her from adult height. "I don't know," Sophia said honestly, and Ethan respected her deeply in that moment for not lying to his daughter. For not saying, of course, and definitely the way people did when they didn't mean it. "But I'd like to." Mia studied her face for a moment. Then she nodded, satisfied by whatever she found there. She let go of Sophia's hand, turned around, and walked back to Ethan's side with the composure of someone who had accomplished exactly what she set out to accomplish. Sophia stood up. She and Ethan looked at each other. The sidewalk moved around them, people, noise, the ordinary Saturday world. "I'm sorry," Ethan said. "One more time. Not for Mia this time." Sophia tilted her head. "For what?" "For this being." He gestured vaguely at the coffee shop, at the morning, at the entire impossible situation. "Whatever this was." "I know what this was," Sophia said. "What was it?" She looked at him for a long moment. "The most real hour I've had in longer than I can remember," she said. She put on her sunglasses, she walked away, and Ethan stood on the sidewalk in his neighborhood, with his daughter holding his hand, watching a billionaire disappear around the corner, feeling the draft again. That persistent, inconvenient draft, through the crack he hadn't known, was there. "Dad," Mia said. "Don't," he said. "I wasn't going to say anything." "You were absolutely going to say something." She was quiet for exactly 4 seconds. "She's going to come back," she said. He didn't answer. He didn't trust himself to answer. The week after the coffee shop was the longest week Ethan could remember since the weeks after Claire died. Not because anything dramatic happened, because nothing happened. That was the problem. He went to work, he picked up Mia. He made dinner, he read bedtime stories. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling in the specific way of a person whose mind will not stop running laps around a single subject. Sophia Bennett. The way she'd laughed. The way she'd eaten half of Mia's muffin without even seeming to notice she was doing it, like her body had just decided it was safe to want something small. The way she'd said the most real hour I've had in longer than I can remember, and how there had been no performance in it, no calculation, just the flat, honest weight of something true. He called his sister on Wednesday night. Her name was Diane, and she lived in Indianapolis, and she was the only person alive who could make Ethan talk about things he'd decided not to talk about. "You sound strange," she said, within 30 seconds of picking up. "I sound exactly like I always sound." "No, you sound like the version of you that's thinking about something you don't want to be thinking about." He leaned against the kitchen counter. Mia was asleep. The apartment was quiet. "There's someone," he said. "At work." Technically, Diane went very still on the other end of the line. He could hear it, that particular silence of a person who is physically restraining themselves from reacting. "Technically at work," she said carefully. It's complicated." "Is she married?" "No." "Is she terrible?" "No." "The opposite." "Then what's the complication?" He exhaled. "She's Sophia Bennett." Silence. "Ethan, I know. As in Bennett Global." "I know, Diane. As in the woman on the Forbes list." "I know. You work in her building. I'm aware." Another silence. "Then, tell me everything," he told her. All of it, the window, the lobby, the coffee shop. Mia's 4 words and the way the coffee shop had gone quiet and the way Sophia had not run, had not laughed it off. Had sat down at a table with a maintenance worker and his 4-year-old daughter for over an hour on a Saturday morning when she could have been anywhere in the world. When he finished, Diane was quiet for a long moment. "What did Mia say on the way home?" she asked. "She said Sophia was going to come back." "Is she wrong?" He looked at the ceiling. "I don't know." "Ethan." Diane's voice went soft, the particular soft she only used for serious things. "When's the last time you wanted something for yourself? Not for Mia. Not for work. For you." He didn't answer. "Claire would be furious at you," Diane said gently. "You know that." "Don't." "She would. She'd be absolutely furious that you've spent 3 years taking care of everything except your own heart." Diane, I'm not saying marry the woman. I'm saying don't pretend you didn't feel something, just because feeling something is terrifying. A pause. Did you feel something? He closed his eyes. Yeah, he said. Quietly, just the one word. Then stop staring at the ceiling and figure out what to do about it, Diane said. And tell Mia I said she's the smartest person in your family. By a significant margin, he almost smiled. She'll take that very seriously. She should. She's right. He didn't expect to see Sophia again so soon. He didn't expect anything, actually, which was how Thursday morning arrived and rearranged everything. He was finishing up a pressure check on the 14th floor of the Bennett building when Gerald called up to tell him his tool order had arrived at the lobby desk. He took the elevator down, signed for the package, and was heading back to the elevator bank when he heard his name. Not Walker, Ethan. He turned around. Sophia was coming out of the building's ground floor conference room. Behind her, through the glass walls, he could see the remains of what had clearly been an early coffee cups, laptops, the particular exhaustion of people who had been talking hard numbers since 8 in the morning. She walked toward him with purpose, and he braced for something professional, something that could be explained by context and building logistics. I was going to call, she said, but I don't have your number. And it felt strange to ask Gerald. He waited. I wanted to say thank you, she said. For Saturday. I didn't do anything on Saturday. You sat down, she said, when you could have taken Mia and left. You sat down. He held the package against his side. You asked us to. I sat down first, she said. You chose to sit down. That's different. He looked at her. She was doing that thing again, that thing of being precise about distinctions that other people let slide. Like the difference between being told to do something and choosing to do it mattered to her enormously. Maybe because people chose to do things around her so rarely. Mia was very pleased with herself, he said. She should be. Something moved in Sophia's expression. She said something to me before you came over, when she first walked up to me. He felt a small current of dread. What did she say? She said, you look like someone forgot to take care of you. Sophia's voice was steady. But just barely. I've had analysts, consultants, board members, and executives around me for 15 years. Nobody has ever said anything that accurate. He didn't know what to say. She looked at him directly. How do you raise someone like that? I have no idea, he said honestly. She came that way. Sophia almost smiled. She didn't. She learned it from watching you. The elevator behind him chimed. Someone got off. The lobby moved around them. And Ethan stood there, holding a tool package, feeling the ground shift very slightly beneath his feet. I need to get back to the 14th floor, he said. I know, neither of them moved. Coffee, Sophia said. Not the coffee shop. Somewhere quieter, this week if you're willing. She held his gaze. Just coffee, as two people, not as. She made a small gesture that encompassed the building, her suit, the conference room behind her, all of it, this. He thought about what Diane had said. He thought about Claire. He thought about Mia's voice saying, we're not being lonely today. Thursday, he said, I'm off at 4. Something in Sophia's face settled. Not relief exactly, something quieter than relief. Something that looked like the feeling of solid ground under a foot that had been braced for nothing but air. Thursday, she said. He got in the elevator. The doors closed. He looked at the floor numbers changing and thought, what are you doing, Ethan Walker? And underneath that something, you're doing something. Finally, Thursday was a small Italian place in Lincoln Square that Sophia had chosen specifically because, as she told him when he arrived, it was too far from the financial district for anyone she knew professionally to see her there. He wasn't sure if that should bother him. It didn't, quite. He understood the need for a space that was just yours. He had the coffee shop in Wicker Park for the same reason. She was already at the table when he walked in. No suit this time, dark jeans, a simple cream sweater, hair down instead of pinned. He almost didn't recognize her, not because she looked different. Because she looked like herself in a way that all the professional packaging usually prevented. He sat down across from her. You look, he started. Different, she said. I know, people always do a small double take. You can say it. I was going to say relaxed, he said. But I didn't want to imply you're usually not. I'm usually not, she said. You can imply it. The waiter came. They ordered coffee. Neither of them looked at the menu for a long moment because they were both apparently occupied with the business of being two people sitting across from each other in a quiet restaurant with no script to follow. "Tell me something," Sophia said. "Tell me something that isn't about the building, or Mia, or anything that already happened. Tell me something nobody knows about you." He looked at her. "That's a very direct opening. I'm a very direct person. When I'm allowed to be." He thought about it, genuinely thought about it. And then he said, "I wanted to be a teacher." She tilted her head. "What kind?" "High school history. I was 2 semesters into an education degree when my dad got sick. I took a job to help cover costs and I never went back." He said it without bitterness. "Just as fact, I was good at the maintenance work. Turned out I was better at it than I expected, and it paid actual money, which education degrees famously don't. Do you regret it? Not the choice, sometimes what the choice cost me." He turned his coffee cup. "Your turn." She looked like the rules of the game hadn't occurred to her as applying to herself as well. She recalibrated. "I wanted to be a painter," she said. He hadn't expected that. "Seriously?" "Oils, landscapes mostly." "I was actually good." The corners of her mouth moved. "I haven't picked up a brush in 11 years. My mother sold my paints when I was 23. She said it was time to stop playing with dreams that wouldn't pay the mortgage." "That's brutal." "She wasn't wrong about the mortgage," Sophia said. "She was wrong about everything else." She paused. "I built a billion-dollar company partially to prove to myself that I could. And partially because I missed painting, and I needed to put that grief somewhere productive." The table went quiet. "That's the most honest thing I've ever heard someone say about ambition," Ethan said. She looked at him like he'd said something unexpected. "Most people tell me I'm inspiring." "You are," he said. "And what you just said is still the most honest thing I've ever heard someone say about ambition." She looked at her coffee. "Mia would like you," she said. Quietly. "If she got to know." He stopped.
She does like you.
"She already does. I meant she'd like the real you. Not the CEO you." "She showed that fairly clearly at the coffee shop," Ethan said. Sophia laughed. "She proposed on your behalf." "Ethan, most adults don't have that kind of conviction about anything." "She's 4. Conviction is all she's made of. Don't minimize it." Sophia's voice had gone serious without going cold. "She looks at people and she sees what's actually there. That's not common, that's genuinely rare. And she looked at you and me and she saw something." He met her eyes. "What do you think she saw?" Sophia was quiet for a moment. The restaurant moved around them, low voices, the clink of cups, and she sat in the middle of it with that particular stillness she had when she was thinking about something real. "Two people who forgot," she finally said, "that they were allowed to want something for themselves." The words hit him somewhere unguarded. He'd been careful. So careful for 3 years. Careful not to want, careful not to need. Careful to keep the world small enough that nothing else could be taken from it, because the one loss he'd already sustained had nearly unmade him, and he could not afford another. But there it was, sitting across from him in a cream sweater with her hair down. "Wanting something and terrified of it." "Sophia," he said. She looked at him. "I have a daughter who gets attached fast," he said. "She got attached to you, in a coffee shop in 40 minutes. If this goes somewhere, and then it doesn't, I know," she said. "I can't, I know, Ethan." Her voice was steady, but her hands had wrapped tight around her cup. "I'm not making promises I don't mean. I'm just asking for coffee on a Thursday. That's all this is right now." He looked at her. She looked back. "Okay," he said. "Coffee on a Thursday, okay," she said. And then, after a pause, "She's going to be insufferable about this, isn't she? When she finds out we had coffee." Ethan pressed his eyes closed. "She's going to be completely unbearable. She's going to tell everyone. She tells everyone everything. Gerald is going to know by Monday." Sophia laughed. And this time the laugh lasted longer, and this time he let himself listen to it, without bracing for what came after. He told Mia he'd had coffee with a friend. Mia looked at him with the specific patience of someone waiting for him to finish the sentence properly. "A work friend," he added. "From the building?" she asked. "Yes." "Sophia," she said. He stared at her. "How did you—" "Because you look like you do when you're happy and scared at the same time," she said. "Like when you took me to my first day of school and you were smiling but your hands were shaking." He crouched down to her level. "I'm not scared," he said. Dad, she put her hand on his face, small, warm hand. The touch of someone who loved him with no conditions attached to it whatsoever. It's okay to be scared and happy at the same time. Mom told me that once. His throat tightened. She told you that? Before she got very sick, Mia said. She said, Mia, the best things are always a little scary. Don't let the scary part win. He didn't trust his voice. He pulled his daughter into a hug and held her tighter than necessary, and she let him, the way she always let him when he needed it, small arms wrapping around his neck like she was the one holding him up. And she was. She absolutely was. Is Sophia coming for pancakes? Mia asked into his shoulder. He almost laughed and almost cried at the same time, which was a combination he had only ever experienced as a parent. We'll see, he said. That means yes, Mia said. That means we'll see. It means yes, she said, with serene certainty. And somewhere across Chicago, in an enormous penthouse apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows and rooms that echoed when she moved through them, Sophia Bennett sat at her dining table, not eating at her desk, not taking a call, not clearing her inbox, and painted. She'd bought a small canvas and a beginner's set of oils at an art supply store on her lunch break. Her first painting in 11 years was not very good. She painted it anyway, and she was smiling while she did. The following week, the ground shifted in ways neither of them had prepared for. It started with a headline. Ethan didn't read financial news. As a rule, it had nothing to do with his life and everything to do with a world that felt like it belonged to other people. But the headline found him the way bad news always finds people who aren't looking for it. A colleague at work showed him on his phone, with the tone of someone delivering gossip they knew was relevant. Sophia Bennett, in talks for landmark overseas expansion global deal, could reshape Bennett Global's entire focus. He read the article in under 2 minutes. The language was corporate and efficient, but the meaning was clear enough. The expansion would require significant hands-on leadership. The deal was being driven by Sophia personally. Sources close to the negotiations described a timeline of 18 months, minimum, with significant presence required abroad. He put the phone down. He went back to work. He didn't call her. He told himself that was because it wasn't his business. Because they'd had one coffee. Because Thursday was just Thursday. Because whatever was happening between them, this cautious, careful, fragile thing, was nowhere near stable enough to survive the weight of real decisions. But that night, after Mia was in bed, he sat on the couch in the dark and thought about what it would mean. She would go. Of course she would go. It was a once-in-a-generation business opportunity. It was the thing people like Sophia Bennett built their whole lives toward. You didn't say no to that. You said yes, and you went, and you kept building. And he would stay, because he always stayed, because Mia was here, and her school was here, and his job was here, and his sister was 2 hours away, and the grave he visited on Claire's birthday was 20 minutes north. He would stay, she would go, and Mia would. He stopped that thought before it finished. He stood up, went to his bedroom, and lay down in the dark, staring at the ceiling. Don't let the scary part win. He closed his eyes, but this time the scary part felt like it had very good reasons on its side. Sophia called him the next morning at 7:43. He was driving Mia to school. He answered on the car speakers without thinking, and Mia went very still in the back seat, in the manner of a small person paying close attention. You saw the article, Sophia said. No greeting. She knew he'd seen it. He wasn't sure how. I saw it, he said. I was going to tell you on Thursday, she said. I've been in those negotiations for months. I didn't pause. I didn't know what we were yet. I didn't want to bring it into something that was still minus fragile, he said. Yes, Mia in the back seat was so still, she might have been carved from something. Are you taking it? He asked. Silence. I don't know, she said. And that from a woman who always knew, landed like something heavy. Sophia, I don't know, she said again softer, and that's new for me. Not knowing. Because something I want is standing on one side, and something else I want is standing on the other. And I've never had that problem before because I've never let myself want both things at the same time. He turned into the school drop-off lane. He could see Mia in the rearview mirror. Her face was composed, too composed. I have to drop Mia off, he said. I know, I'm sorry for the timing. Don't be. He pulled to the curb. Thursday, he said. Same pause. You still want. Thursday, he said. We'll talk then. He heard her exhale. Thursday, she said. He ended the call. He turned around to look at Mia. She was looking at him with those dark eyes. Is she leaving? Mia asked. He held her gaze. I don't know, Bug. Mia was quiet for a moment. Are you going to let her? Ethan Walker sat in his car in the school drop-off lane with his daughter's question hanging in the air between them like smoke. And for the first time in 3 years, he had absolutely no idea what the right answer was. Mia's question stayed with him all day. Are you going to let her? He turned it over the way he turned over problems at work, methodically, looking for the point of failure, the crack in the system, the place where things had gone wrong before he got there. But this wasn't a ventilation system. This wasn't a compression seal on a window. This was the kind of problem that had no schematic, no parts list, no procedure manual sitting in the back of a van. He fixed things for a living. He was very good at it. And he had absolutely no idea how to fix this. He went through the motions of Thursday. Finished the maintenance cycle on the 11th floor. Filed 3 work orders. Ate lunch alone in the break room, reading a sports page he wasn't actually reading. Answered a call from Diane, told her nothing useful, hung up before she could extract anything from him. Picked up Mia at 3:30. Listened to her talk about a disagreement she'd had with a boy named Cooper who insisted that dinosaurs were still alive somewhere, and Mia had informed him with some force that he was wrong about this, and her teacher had to separate them. Were you polite about it? Ethan asked. I was accurate, Mia said. That's not the same thing. It should be, she said. He almost smiled. Almost. By Thursday evening, he was sitting across from Sophia in the same Italian place in Lincoln Square, and neither of them had spoken for almost 2 full minutes, which should have been uncomfortable and somehow wasn't. It was the particular silence of 2 people who were each waiting for the other to be brave enough to start. Sophia started. The board wants an answer by the end of the month, she said. How much time is that? 19 days. He nodded slowly. And where are you, honestly? She looked at her hands. 3 weeks ago, I would have said yes before they finished the sentence. This kind of deal, this scale, it's everything I've been building toward for 10 years. There's no rational reason to hesitate, but you're hesitating. I'm sitting in Lincoln Square on a Thursday evening, talking to a man I've known for less than 2 months, she said. Yes, I'm hesitating. He leaned forward. Sophia. Don't make this about me. She looked up sharply. I mean it, he said. Don't turn down something you've built your whole career toward because of a few cups of coffee and a 4-year-old with strong opinions. It's not about the coffee, she said. Then what is it about? She was quiet. Then when I walked into that building every morning for the last 10 years, I told myself that the company, the work, the growth, this was enough. That it had to be enough because it was what I chose. She looked at him steadily. And then your daughter walked up to me in a coffee shop and told me I looked like someone forgot to take care of me. And something came loose that I'd been keeping very tightly in place for a very long time. He sat with that. You can take the deal, and still he started. Don't, she said. Don't say I can have both. You don't know that. 18 months abroad, minimum, possibly longer. The kind of work this deal requires doesn't leave room for. She stopped. Pressed her lips together. Started again, for any of this. The word this sat between them, covering everything. So what are you asking me? He said. His voice was level. He'd gotten very good at level. She looked at him for a long moment. I don't know, she said. I think I'm asking you if any of this is real. Or if I'm catastrophizing about losing something that was never certain to begin with. He held her gaze. It's real, he said, simply directly. The way he did everything, she exhaled. Okay, she said. Quietly. But I can't tell you what to do with it, he said. That's yours. She nodded. Her jaw was set, but her eyes were doing something complicated. I know. He reached across the table and put his hand over hers. He didn't hold it, just covered it. One brief, steady contact, the kind that says I see you without asking for anything in return. She looked at his hand on hers. Then she turned her hand over and held his. And neither of them said anything else for a while. Because sometimes what needs to be said has already been said, and adding more words to it only dilutes it. The waiter refilled their coffee. The restaurant moved around them. 2 people sat at a corner table in Lincoln Square, holding on to something neither of them had names for, yet both of them knowing that 19 days was not very much time. The charity gala was Sophia's event. Ethan found out about it because Gerald told him he'd need an extra crew on site that Saturday. For technical setup, Bennett Global was hosting its annual foundation dinner at a venue 2 blocks from the office, and they needed maintenance support for the evening. He was not expecting to bring Mia. Mia was expecting to go. He discovered this Friday afternoon when he mentioned the gala in passing, describing it as a work thing, the kind of boring adult event that involved speeches and people in expensive clothes standing around congratulating themselves. And Mia had looked up from her drawing and said, "Is Sophia going to be there?" "It's her event," he said. "Then I want to go," Mia said. "It's not that kind of event. Can children come?" He opened his mouth, closed it. The honest answer was that he didn't know. Technically, yes, there's supposed to be a family section. "Then I want to go," she said again, with the absolute finality of a person who has just won an argument by logic and intends to let that victory speak for itself. His sitter was available. He had a valid reason not to bring her. He said yes anyway, which told him something about himself that he filed away to examine later. The gala was the kind of event that reminded Ethan, viscerally, of the distance between his world and Sophia's. Not in a way that made him resentful, just in the way that made it visible the space between a man who fixed things and a woman who owned them, made concrete in the form of a ballroom full of people who had never once worried about a bill. He worked the first hour, checked the sound system, dealt with a lighting issue on the stage, coordinated with the venue's tech team. Mia sat in the family seating area with the particular dignity of a child who had decided to behave impeccably because she understood the stakes. He checked on her between tasks. She was fine. She was always fine. He was crossing the main floor when he saw Sophia take the stage. He stopped. The room had gone attentive the moment she stepped up. This was what she did, what she had built, the gravitational pull of someone who had learned to command space. She spoke about the foundation's work, about the communities they'd funded, about the difference between giving money and giving attention, and her voice was the one he recognized from the building: controlled, precise, impressive. But her eyes found him. Across a full ballroom, she found him almost immediately, like she'd known exactly where he was standing. And something in her expression shifted just for a moment, just a fraction, something that was softer than the CEO and more real than the performance. He looked back at her, and then someone touched his arm. He turned, a man he didn't recognize, mid-50s, the kind of groomed and composed that comes from decades of comfort. He was looking at Ethan with an expression that was politely assessing and not entirely polite. "You're Walker," the man said. "The maintenance supervisor." "Yes," Ethan said. "Richard Hale." He didn't extend a hand. "I'm on the Bennett Global board." Ethan waited. "I've heard you've developed something of a relationship with Sophia," Hale said. The way he said relationship managed. Richard Hale looked at Ethan the way certain men look at things they consider below their pay grade, not with cruelty, just with the particular indifference of someone who has never had to consider what it costs to be on the other side of that look. "She's at a critical juncture," Hale said. His voice was pleasant, conversational, the voice of a man who had learned to make threats sound like observations. "The overseas expansion is the single most important strategic move Bennett Global has made in a decade. The board is united behind it, and Sophia's focus at this moment needs to be absolute." Ethan said nothing. "Distractions," Hale continued, "at this level of business, can be genuinely costly. Not just for the company, for her." He paused. "She's worked very hard to build what she has. It would be a shame for anything to complicate that. For anyone to complicate that." The ballroom moved around them. Sophia was still speaking on stage. Her voice carried over the crowd, clear, confident, the voice of someone who had earned every person in that room's attention. Ethan looked at Hale steadily. "Is this the part where you tell me to step back?" Hale smiled. "Just slightly. I'm simply offering context." "No," Ethan said. "You're offering pressure. Wrapped in context." He kept his voice even. "I appreciate you being direct enough that I don't have to guess what you meant. That saves us both time." Hale's smile didn't move, but his eyes did. Something shifted in them, a small recalibration, the look of a man who expected a maintenance supervisor to fold and was finding, with mild surprise, that this one wasn't going to. "She's going to take the deal," Hale said. "The board will make certain of that. Whatever you think is happening between you, I'd encourage you to consider the math." He walked away. Ethan stood still for a moment. On stage, Sophia finished her remarks. The room applauded. She stepped back from the podium with the practiced grace of someone who had done this 100 times, and Ethan watched her smile at the audience that managed, beautiful, performance smile, and then watched her eyes sweep the room again, looking for something. Looking for him. He raised his hand slightly, just enough. She found him, and the managed smile became something else. For a second, just between them, he thought, Richard Hale has no idea what he's actually dealing with. And then immediately after, neither do you, Walker. After the speeches, the dinner, the endless choreography of a formal charity event, Sophia found him near the side exit, where he'd been coordinating with the venue staff on a speaker issue. She appeared at his elbow, so suddenly that he almost dropped his radio. Richard Hale talked to you, she said. It wasn't a question. He did, Ethan said. What did he say? He looked at her directly. He said you're going to take the deal, that the board will make sure of it, and that I should consider the math. Something moved across Sophia's face fast and sharp, the specific fury of a person who has been managed without their consent and recognizes the shape of it immediately. He had no right. He had every right, Ethan said. He's protecting a business interest. That's his job. He held her gaze. The question isn't whether he was out of line. The question is whether he was wrong. Sophia went very still. Ethan, is he wrong? He said. Tell me honestly. She looked at him for a long moment. The party moved around them, oblivious, hundreds of people in expensive clothes doing expensive things, and she stood in the middle of it like the floor had tilted slightly beneath her, and she was deciding whether to let it take her. I don't know, she said. Then we need to talk about this properly, he said. Not here, not tonight, she said. Not tonight, he agreed. They looked at each other across the narrow space of a side corridor, and the unsaid thing between them was enormous, bigger than the room, bigger than the deal, bigger than Richard Hale and his board of directors and their collective sense of what Sophia Bennett's future should look like. And then Mia appeared, because of course she did. She came around the corner from the family seating area, looking very purposeful and slightly out of breath, clearly having navigated the event entirely on her own terms, and she walked straight up to Sophia and said, I heard your speech. Sophia blinked. Did you? You said that caring about something is different from caring for something. Mia looked up at her with absolute seriousness. That's true. Dad cares about a lot of things, but he cares for me. There's a difference. Sophia crouched down. Her formal dress pooled on the floor, and she didn't seem to notice or care. You're right, she said softly. There absolutely is. Do you have someone who cares for you? Mia asked. The directness of it was like a stone dropped into still water. Sophia's face did something complicated, something she couldn't fully control. I'm working on it, she said. Mia considered this. Then she put her small hand on Sophia's face, the same gesture she used on Ethan when he was upset, that ancient, instinctive comfort, and said, Don't work too slow. Sophia laughed, but her eyes were bright in a way that had nothing to do with the event lighting. I'll try, she said. Ethan stood there watching his daughter comfort a billionaire with the casual expertise of someone who had been practicing on him for years, and he thought, this is it. This is the thing I'm afraid to lose, not just her. This exact thing that happens when these two people are in the same room. The next morning arrived with the sound of his phone at 6:41. Not Sophia, Diane. Talk to me, his sister said the moment he answered. It's 6:41 in the morning. I know what time it is. I've been up since 5. I saw the photos. He sat up. What photos? From the gala last night. Someone posted them. There's one of you and Sophia in what looks like a side corridor, and it's been picked up by 3 gossip sites and 1 business publication. A pause. The business publication is calling her judgment into question. The gossip sites are mostly just excited, but Ethan, the board, is going to see this. He pressed his hand over his face. They already know. One of them spoke to me last night. They know. Diane's voice went up. And you didn't? I was going to call you today. You were going to make pancakes and think about it for another week, which is not the same as calling me. She exhaled. What are you going to do? I don't know yet, Ethan. Her voice dropped. I need you to listen to me, not as your sister who wants you to be happy, but as someone who has watched you for 3 years put everyone ahead of yourself until there was nothing left of you that wasn't about taking care of other people. A pause. You found something. It might be terrifying and complicated and make no logical sense whatsoever. But you found something. Don't you dare talk yourself out of it, because Richard Hale did his job. He was quiet, and Sophia, Diane asked, "She doesn't know what she's going to do." "Then go be with her while she figures it out," Diane said. Not to push her, not to need something from her, just so she doesn't have to figure it out alone. That's what you do, Ethan. You show up. It's what you're best at. So show up. He sat with that for a moment. "When did you get wise?" he said. "I've always been wise," Diane said. "You've always been too stubborn to notice. A beat." "Go call her. I'll drive up this weekend and watch Mia." He called Sophia at 7:15. She answered on the second ring. "You saw the photos," she said. "My sister saw the photos," he said. "She called me at 6:41. My PR director called me at 6:12. A hollow laugh. She used the phrase reputational exposure 4 times in under 3 minutes. I counted. Sophia. "The board is calling an emergency session Monday morning," she said. "They want to formally discuss the overseas expansion." Which is board language for formally discussing whether my personal decisions are affecting my professional judgment. Her voice was controlled, but tightly so, like something kept in place by effort rather than ease. "Richard moves fast. What are you going to tell them?" "The truth," she said, "that my personal life is not their jurisdiction." "And the deal?" A long silence. "I need to see you," she said. "Not on the phone. In person. Tell me where." She came to his apartment. He hadn't planned to bring her here, this small, honest space with its Saturday pancake kitchen and its double-knotted laces and Claire's photograph on the living room shelf. But she'd asked to come, and he'd said yes, and he stood in the hallway and felt the particular vulnerability of letting someone see the actual shape of your life instead of the version you can manage on neutral ground. Mia was at a neighbor's for an hour. Ethan had asked with the vague explanation of adult conversation, which the neighbor, a retired schoolteacher named Mrs. Park, who had watched Mia since she was 2, had accepted with a look that suggested she knew exactly what kind of adult conversation this was. Sophia stood in his living room and looked around. Not critically, quietly, the way you look at a place when you're trying to understand the person who lives in it. Her eyes found Claire's photograph. She didn't look away from it or pretend she hadn't seen it. "That's her," she said softly. "Claire, yes." She looked at it for a moment. "She has Mia's eyes. Mia has hers," he said. "She got almost everything from her mother." "Not everything," Sophia said. She looked at him. "She got something from you too. The part that sees people, the part that stays." He gestured toward the couch. She sat. He sat across from her. And then, without preamble, without managing it, Sophia said, "I'm scared." 2 words, stripped of everything, he said. "I don't do scared," she said. "I solve problems. I make decisions. I move forward. I've been doing it since I was 23 years old, and my mother told me to put away my paints and be practical. I decided right then that no situation was ever going to make me feel that helpless again. And I've kept that. For 15 years I have kept that. And now I'm sitting on a maintenance supervisor's couch in Lincoln Park, trying to figure out why the biggest deal of my career feels like the wrong answer." "Does it feel like the wrong answer?" he said. "Or does it feel like a hard answer?" She looked at him sharply. "There's a difference," he said. "The wrong answers usually feel easy at first. The hard answers feel wrong before they feel right." She was quiet for a moment. "You're doing it again," she said. "Doing what?" "Saying the thing that lands in exactly the place I didn't know needed to be hit." She rubbed her eyes, a real gesture, unguarded, the gesture of someone deeply tired. "How are you this steady? You lost your wife. You're raising a child alone. You live on a budget that would make my quarterly projections cry. How are you this?" She gestured at him. "This. I'm not steady," he said quietly. "I look steady because I've had to be. There's a difference." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I'm terrified, Sophia, every day, that I'm not enough for Mia. That I'm going to get something wrong. That I've kept my world so small trying to protect it, that I forgot how to be anything outside of it." He held her gaze. "You asked who takes care of me. The answer is nobody. And I let that be fine for 3 years, because it was easier than admitting I was lonely. And then your daughter sat down in a coffee shop." "My daughter." she said. She's not daughter, he said again. The way Mia looks at you, that's not the way she looks at strangers. That's the way she looks at people she's already decided belong to her. Sophia's breath came out unevenly. You can't say things like that to me, she said. Why not? Because it makes the decision harder, she said. And I need it to be easier. I need one clear right answer, and I cannot find it. He stood up, crossed the room, sat beside her on the couch, not close, not touching, just present. Because Diane was right. Showing up was the thing he was best at. Not solving, not fixing, just being there in the specific, steady way that said you are not alone in this. Tell me what you want, he said. Not what the board wants. Not what Richard Hale wants, not what the deal is worth. What do you want? She was quiet for so long he thought she might not answer. Then I want to stop eating dinner alone, she said. I want to have someone who notices when I haven't eaten. I want to sit on a floor and play games with a 4-year-old who calls me out on everything and loves me anyway. I want to paint badly on a Saturday night and not care that it's bad because someone is in the next room and that's enough. She stopped. Her voice was unsteady. I want the thing I've been telling myself I didn't need. For 15 years I've been telling myself I didn't need it, and I was fine. And I wasn't fine. I was building and building and building and calling it enough, and it wasn't. The room was very quiet. Then say that, Ethan said. To who? To yourself, he said. First to yourself. The board is secondary. The deal is secondary. What do you want your life to look like, Sophia? Not the company. Your life. She turned to look at him. Her eyes were bright. Not crying, she was not a person who cried easily. He understood that by now, but close. The particular bright of someone standing at the edge of something they've been afraid to step toward. You, she said, simply Mia, something real. She exhaled. That's terrifying to say out loud. I know, he said. Because it means I have to decide what I'm willing to give for it.
Yes.
And what I'm not willing to give.
Yes.
She looked at him. And what about you? What do you want? He didn't hesitate. He was tired of hesitating. He had spent 3 years being careful and cautious and managed, and all it had gotten him was a very organized, very lonely life. You, he said. More Thursdays, more bad paintings apparently. More of whatever this is, he paused, and I want Mia to have someone. Not to replace anything, just to add to it, because she already picked you. And she has good instincts, better than mine. Sophia laughed, that real laugh, startled out of her, the one he'd been filing away since the first time he heard it. And then she leaned her head against his shoulder. Just that, quietly, like something coming to rest after a long flight. He stayed still, he let it happen. What do we do about the board, she said. That's your territory, he said. I can't walk into a boardroom for you. No, she said, but you can be here when I walk out of it. He turned his head and looked at her. Yeah, he said. I can do that. Monday morning arrived with the particular weight of things that cannot be postponed. Sophia walked into that boardroom at 9 a.m. Ethan knew because she texted him at 8:57 going in. Wish me luck. He typed back, you don't need luck. You know what you want. Say it. He put his phone in his pocket. He was on the 3rd floor of a different building across town, running a routine inspection, doing the work that paid his bills and kept his daughter fed. He was not in a position to do anything about what was happening in that boardroom, except what he'd told Sophia he would do. Be there when she walked out of it. The meeting ran 2 hours and 14 minutes. He knew because he checked his phone at 9 and again at 11:14 when the text came through. Still alive, call you at lunch. She called at 12:03. How bad, he said. They weren't happy, she said. Her voice was steady, but it had the texture of someone who had just finished something very hard. Hale pushed, hard. 3 other board members backed him. They were very clear that the expansion deal requires my full and undivided commitment. And what did you say? A pause. I said that my personal life was not a board matter, that my professional performance speaks for itself, and that I would give them my decision on the expansion Friday. Not today, she said. I needed 4 more days. I took them. Good, he said. Ethan. Her voice shifted. There's something else. He waited. Hale had a file, she said. About you, not just general information, specific things. Where you grew up, your education history, Claire. How she died. A pause, Mia. The coldness came slowly and then all at once. He researched Mia, Ethan said. He researched your entire life, Sophia said. He presented it to the board as her voice tightened, as evidence that you would be a reputational liability. Those were the exact words. A maintenance worker with a dead wife and a small child was a reputational liability to a woman of her standing. The silence between them was the kind that happens after something crosses a line. "Are you okay?" she said. "Are you?" he said. "I'm furious," she said. Which is different from not okay. What happened in the room when he said it? "I told him to close the file," Sophia said, in front of all of them. "I told him that if his measure of a man was his paycheck and his job title, then I had serious concerns about his fitness to sit on any board I chaired." Another pause. 3 people clapped, quietly, but they clapped. Something in Ethan's chest unknotted by about a millimeter. "You didn't have to do that," he said. "Yes," she said. "I absolutely did." He was quiet, Ethan. He had a photograph of Claire's grave. Her voice had dropped. "With a note about the date of her death and the date you took the job at the building." She stopped. He was trying to build a narrative, that this is minus, that I'm after something, Ethan said flatly. "Yes." He exhaled, long controlled, and the board, half of them saw exactly what it was, she said. A man trying to protect a business interest by tearing down a private individual. The other half, she stopped. The other half believed it, he said. The other half was uncertain, she said carefully. Which is Hale's goal. He doesn't need proof, he needs doubt. Ethan sat down. He was in a stairwell fire door, cold concrete, and he sat on the steps and pressed his hand over the back of his neck. "I should never have," he started. "Don't," Sophia said. Her voice was sharp. "Do not say you should have walked away. Do not make Richard Hale's argument for him. I'm not making his argument. I'm thinking about you. Then think about me accurately," she said. "Because the thing that would actually damage me is not having this. Is going back to eating dinner alone and pretending I don't notice how quiet the penthouse is at night." Her voice cracked slightly. "Just slightly. He can have his file, he can have his boardroom. He doesn't get to have this." Ethan sat in the stairwell. He thought about Claire. He thought about the morning she was diagnosed, and the months after, and the last week, and the first night alone, in an apartment that still smelled like her. He thought about Mia's first morning as the only parent of a 14-month-old, when he'd sat on the kitchen floor because he couldn't figure out how to make it to the counter. He thought about how long he'd been carrying it alone. And he thought about a woman who had built something extraordinary out of her own loneliness, who was now standing in the middle of a boardroom, refusing to let a small, cold man reduce either of them to a liability. "Friday," he said. "What are you going to tell them Friday?" A long pause. "I'll tell you Thursday," she said. "Same place." "Same place," he said. He hung up. He sat in the stairwell for another 90 seconds. Then he stood up, picked up his toolbox, and went back to work. He told Mia that night. Not all of it, not Hale, not the file, not the photo of Claire's grave, because there are things you protect your children from, and that was one of them. But he told her that things with Sophia were complicated. That some people didn't think they should be friends. That it might mean some hard decisions for everyone. Mia listened to all of this with her serious face. Then she said, "Is Sophia going to stop coming around?" "I don't know," he said honestly. "Does she want to?" "No," he said, "I don't think she wants to." "Then it's simple," Mia said. "She should do what she wants, not what the mean people want." "It's not quite that simple, Bug. Why not?" He looked at his daughter. 4 years old, dark eyes, the particular unassailable logic of someone who had not yet learned that the world punishes simple truths. "Because sometimes doing what you want costs something," he said. Mia thought about this. "Mom wanted to stay," she said quietly. "She couldn't. That was different." His heart clenched. "Yes," he said, "that was different. This is different too," Mia said. "Sophia can stay. She's just deciding if she wants to." She looked at him directly. "Do you want her to stay?" He met his daughter's eyes. "Yeah," he said, "I do." Mia nodded like a verdict had been rendered. "Then tell her," she said. "She knows," he said. "Tell her again," Mia said. "People forget they're wanted. They need to be told more than once." He stared at his 4-year-old daughter. "You're terrifying," he said. "I know," she said, pleasantly. He hugged her, held her long enough that she patted his back in the way she did when she thought he was being emotional and needed managing. "It's going to be okay, Dad," she said, into his shoulder. Yeah, he said. I think it might be. Thursday was coming. And whatever Sophia said across that table on Thursday night was going to change the shape of everything that came after. He was scared. He was also, underneath the scared, something else. Something that had been buried for 3 years under work orders and bedtime stories and the quiet management of grief. He was hopeful, and that, for the first time in a very long time, felt like enough to keep moving toward. Thursday arrived, the way important things always arrive quietly, without announcement, dressed like an ordinary day. Ethan dropped Mia at school. She hugged him at the gate, then turned back once, the way she sometimes did, and said, "Tell her what you told me." Then she walked in without explaining which part she meant. She didn't need to. He knew. He spent the day working. A hydraulic issue on the service elevator of a building on Michigan Avenue. Routine, mechanical, the kind of problem that had a solution you could hold in your hands. He was grateful for it. The body doing familiar things while the mind does its necessary work. At 3:40 he texted Sophia, "Still on for tonight?" She replied in under a minute, "I'll be there at 7. "There's something I need to tell you in person." He read that sentence 4 times. Something I need to tell you in person could mean anything. He knew that. He told himself that. He also spent the next 3 hours with a low current of dread running under everything he did. Because when someone who normally calls you says they need to say something in person, the range of possible meanings contracts to roughly 2 categories, and only one of them was good. He picked up Mia, fed her dinner, got her settled with Diane, who had driven up from Indianapolis that afternoon, exactly as promised, arriving with a bag, a casserole, and the look of a woman prepared to hold down a fort. "How are you feeling?" Diane asked, while Mia was in the other room. "Like I'm waiting on a verdict," he said. "Whatever she says." Diane said, "You're going to be okay." "You know that, right?" "I know," he said. "And if she says yes?" He looked at his sister. "Then I'm going to be better than okay," he said. And he meant it in a way that reached all the way down. Sophia was already at the restaurant when he walked in. Not late this time, early. Sitting at their corner table with her hands around a water glass. Not coffee, which meant she'd been there long enough to have already gone through a cup and moved on, which meant she'd been there a while. Which meant whatever she was carrying into this conversation, she'd been carrying for some time and couldn't put it down long enough to arrive at a normal hour. He sat across from her. He looked at her face. She looked back at him. "You're going to tell me you took the deal," he said. He said it quietly, not as an accusation, as something he'd prepared for. As something he'd told himself he could survive. "No," she said. He went very still. "I'm going to tell you I turned it down," she said. The restaurant noise continued around them. Someone laughed across the room. A waiter passed with a tray. The ordinary machinery of a Thursday evening in Lincoln Square moved forward exactly as it always had. Ethan sat there and felt the world rearrange itself by about 6 degrees. "Sophia, let me finish," she said. Her voice was steady. She'd prepared this, he could tell, prepared it the way she prepared presentations, the way she prepared for board meetings, building the argument in the right order so it landed correctly. "I did not turn it down because of you. I need you to hear that first. I turned it down because I sat in my office on Tuesday night at 10 p.m. reading the expansion projections, and I looked up and the city was spread out in front of me, and I thought, when this is done, in 18 months, in 2 years, whenever it ends, what am I coming back to? What is the thing I'm building toward?" And the answer I kept arriving at was nothing that I couldn't have built without leaving. Nothing that required me to go. She met his eyes. The deal was never going to give me what I actually needed. I'd been telling myself it would for months, and then a 4-year-old sat on a floor with me and asked if I had someone who cared for me, and I couldn't answer her, and that was the answer. He said nothing for a moment. "The board," he said. "The board will adjust," she said. "They always do. The company is not going anywhere. There are other deals. There will always be other deals." A pause. "There is not always a Mia Walker who decides you belong to her family before you've earned it. That kind of thing." Her voice went briefly unsteady. "You don't find twice." He looked at her across the table. "You're sure?" he said. "I've been sure since Tuesday night," she said. "I've been trying to find the flaw in it for 3 days, and I can't. Every time I try to find a reason, it's the wrong decision. I think about sitting at that table in the coffee shop. I think about Mia taking my hand on the sidewalk. I think about you putting your hand over mine and not asking for anything back. She exhaled. The right decisions don't always feel easy, but they feel true. And this feels true. Ethan reached across the table. She put her hand in his. Okay, he said. She said. I'm not going to argue with you, he said. I spent 2 weeks telling myself I should step back, so you could make this choice clearly. Without me in the way. You were never in the way, she said. I know that now. He held her hand. Hale had it backwards. He thought you needed protecting from me, but you never needed protecting from anything. You needed someone who didn't treat you like something to be protected. Someone who just sat down. She looked at him. You keep sitting down, she said. I keep sitting down, he said. She laughed, quietly. With her whole face, the way she only ever laughed when she wasn't managing how she looked doing it. Richard Hale submitted a formal complaint to the board about the expansion decision, she said. He's calling a vote of no confidence for next month. Ethan's hand tightened slightly on hers. He can try, she said. He won't win. I have the votes. And even if I didn't, she straightened. That particular Sophia Bennett straightening, the one where the spine goes steel and the eyes go clear. I built that company, from 23, with a maxed-out credit card and my mother's dining room table. Richard Hale has been on that board for 6 years. He does not get to decide what I'm worth. No, Ethan said. He doesn't. But I want you to know, she said, and her voice dropped back down from steel to something softer and more real, that if it goes badly, if the vote is closer than I think, if this gets harder before it gets easier, I'm not going to run. I've spent my whole life running toward the next thing, to avoid sitting still with anything that scared me. I'm done with that. Are you scared right now? He said. She looked at him directly. Absolutely terrified, she said. But it's the right kind, he smiled. The real one, the one that Mia said she hadn't seen enough of. Yeah, he said. Me too. They were still at the table at 10:30 when the restaurant began to close around them. Chairs turned up on empty tables. Waitstaff doing end-of-night work with the polite persistence of people waiting to go home. They ordered nothing else. They talked for 3 hours straight. The real talking, the kind where you say the things you've been carrying around, looking for somewhere to set them down. She told him about her mother, the paints, the specific grief of being told that what you love is impractical and watching yourself believe it over time. He told her about the night Claire died, the hospital, the drive home, sitting in the parking garage for 45 minutes because he couldn't figure out how to go inside and tell a 14-month-old that her mother wasn't coming back. That Mia obviously didn't understand, and that somehow made it worse, the fact that Mia just kept reaching for him, happy to see him, not knowing yet what had been lost. Sophia listened to all of it without moving. How did you get through that night? She said. I got out of the car, he said. That was the whole plan. Just get out of the car, go inside, be there for whatever came next. He paused. That's been the plan every day since. Just get out of the car. She looked at him for a long moment. I've been sitting in the car for 15 years, she said quietly. I know, he said, but you got out. She nodded, one small certain nod. I got out, she said. The waiter came by with the check. Sophia reached for it, reflexively, the automatic gesture of someone for whom picking up a check had become second nature. Ethan got there first. She looked at his hand on the check. Ethan, it's $12, he said. I can manage $12. She looked at him with something warm and complicated. You know, that's not what I know, he said, but you paid last time. And the time before that, and I'd like to pay for my own coffee sometimes. She sat back. All right, she said, and there was something in the way she said it, not concession, but acceptance. A recognition of being treated as an equal by someone who didn't need anything from her. Besides, he said, putting his card down, Mia's going to ask me how tonight went, and when I tell her you turned down the deal, she's going to say she told me so. And I'd like to have at least one thing tonight that went according to my plan. Sophia laughed. Did you have a plan? No, he admitted. I had a hope. That's different. It worked out, she said. The hope or the plan? Both, she said. Neither. Something better. He texted Diane from the sidewalk outside the restaurant. She turned down the deal. Talk tomorrow. Diane responded in 4 seconds. I knew it. Tell Mia first thing. She's going to be insufferable. He pocketed his phone and looked at Sophia. "My sister says Mia is going to be insufferable," he said. "She's going to say she told us so," Sophia said. Repeatedly, he confirmed. "I can handle it," Sophia said, and the way she said it, without qualification, without hesitation, with the ease of someone who had already decided this was her problem to have hit him somewhere quiet and necessary. She could handle it. She wanted to. He looked at her standing on the sidewalk in her coat. No entourage, no assistant, no boardroom, just a woman who had walked out of a very large, very complicated life towards something smaller and realer and infinitely more difficult to manage. "Come to breakfast Saturday," he said. She looked at him. "Pancakes," he said. "Mia picks the toppings, which is a process, I should warn you, involves negotiations. She'll want to know your position on blueberries before she allows you a vote." Sophia was smiling, the full one, both eyes involved, the one that started before she knew it was starting. "What's your position on blueberries?" "Strongly in favor," he said. "But I've learned not to say that until she's committed to a direction." "Diplomatic," she said. "Survival," he said. She stepped forward. One step, and she put her hand on the side of his face, the same gesture Mia used on him. He realized that ancient and instinctive comfort, and she said quietly, "Thank you for sitting down." He covered her hand with his, held it there for a moment. "Thank you for staying at the table," he said. She nodded. He let her hand go. "Saturday," he said. "Saturday," she said. She walked to her car. He walked to his, and the sidewalk in Lincoln Square on a Thursday night was just a sidewalk, ordinary, unremarkable, the kind of place where nothing is supposed to happen, and everything had happened there anyway. 6 months later, a headline ran in 3 business publications and a handful of lifestyle sites. Not front page, not the kind of thing that stopped a news cycle. But it ran. Sophia Bennett restructures leadership team, cites commitment to sustainable growth and personal vision. The article quoted her briefly and directly. She had declined to expand the company into overseas operations at this time. She had restructured her executive schedule to allow for what she called the kind of leadership that requires presence, not just performance. Richard Hale had resigned from the board 2 months prior, citing irreconcilable differences in strategic vision. 3 board members had issued a joint statement supporting her direction. Ethan read the article on his lunch break. He texted her, "Sustainable growth and personal vision." Very corporate. She texted back, "I had to give them something they could put in a press release. I couldn't write. I decided I wanted pancakes on Saturdays more than I wanted Singapore." He smiled at his phone in the break room of a building he was working on in River North. A maintenance supervisor eating a sandwich, reading a business article about a decision that had changed the shape of 2 people's lives. He texted back, "Mia wants you to know she accepts full credit." Sophia replied, "She should. She's earned it." Saturday mornings became the thing. Not just some Saturdays, most Saturdays. The ritual took shape the way real things take shape, without planning, through repetition and preference, and the accumulation of small moments that become, over time, the substance of a life. Sophia arrived at 9, always at 9, because Mia had established 9 as the appropriate time and had communicated this with the clarity of someone issuing a policy memo. She brought coffee from the place in Wicker Park, the right one, the one with the window seats, because she'd learned early that Ethan's home coffee was adequate, and she was not willing to settle for adequate on a Saturday. Mia directed the pancake toppings with the authority of someone who had thought carefully about flavor combinations and expected her judgment to be respected. Sophia had, after 2 months of Saturdays, developed firm opinions about blueberry to batter ratio and was not shy about sharing them. Ethan stood at the stove and watched them argue about whether chocolate chips constituted a breakfast food or a dessert food and thought, "This is it. This is the shape of it, not perfect, not uncomplicated." Sophia's phone still rang at inconvenient times, and she would always be probably someone who thought in quarterly projections and strategic frameworks, and who occasionally looked at the small, honest dimensions of his apartment with the expression of someone recalibrating from a larger scale. And he would always be someone who checked the locks twice before sleeping, and made Claire's recipe for Saturday pancakes, and kept her photograph on the shelf where it had always been, because some things are not about moving on, but about carrying forward. But in the gap between her world and his, something had taken root. Something that didn't require either of them to become different from what they were. Something that just required them to sit down, to stay at the table. To show up, Dad, Mia said, from the kitchen table, in the serious tone that meant she was about to make a pronouncement. Yeah, Bug, I've decided that chocolate chips are a breakfast food on Saturdays only. Very generous ruling, Ethan said. Sophia agrees, Mia said. I absolutely agree, Sophia said, and caught Ethan's eye over Mia's head with the expression of someone who had learned to choose their battles carefully and had no regrets about this particular choice. Ethan turned back to the stove. He was smiling, the real one. One Sunday in late October, Ethan drove out to the cemetery alone. He went every year on the anniversary and sometimes in between when he needed the particular quiet of it. He brought flowers, the kind Claire had always kept on the kitchen windowsill, small and yellow and slightly stubborn-looking, and he sat on the bench nearby and talked. He always talked. He'd learned early that grief doesn't get quieter if you ignore it. It just gets louder in different places. He told her about Mia, about the Cooper incident and the diners dispute and the way Mia had recently decided that her reading skills were sufficient to move to chapter books, which was accurate but had resulted in a situation where she was asking questions about words that required some careful navigation. He told her about Sophia. He told her the whole of it, from the window on the 42nd floor to the coffee shop to Lincoln Square to the boardroom and the file and the Thursday when everything settled into its shape. He told her what Mia had said. She smiles differently when you talk to her. Like how Mom smiled at you. He sat with that for a while. Then he said, I think you'd have liked her. She's not easy. She's got sharp edges and she works too hard, and she's still learning how to let a morning be just a morning without turning it into a project. He paused. But she shows up. She keeps showing up, and she loves Mia in the exact specific way that Mia needs. She takes her seriously. You always said the most important thing you could do for her was take her seriously. Another pause. So I think you'd have liked her. He was quiet. The wind moved through the trees. The kind of quiet that isn't empty. I'm okay, he said. I want you to know that. I'm okay, and Mia is more than okay, and I'm not done missing you. I'm not going to pretend I am, but I'm not carrying it alone anymore. He stood up, set the flowers down, put his hand briefly on the stone. I'm getting out of the car, he said, every day. Just like you'd want. He drove home. Sophia was on the couch when he walked in. Mia was asleep against her side, a chapter book open in her lap, her small face completely peaceful in the way that only sleeping children achieve. Sophia looked up when he came in, reading him in the specific way she'd gotten very good at, the way of someone paying close attention. Okay, she said softly. Yeah, he said. He sat down. On her other side, she leaned into him slightly, a small, natural adjustment, the movement of someone who has learned the particular geography of another person and knows where they fit. Mia slept on. The apartment was warm. The evening was quiet. There was a chapter book and a sleeping child, and two people who had arrived at this moment through a completely improbable series of events that had started with 4 words from a 4-year-old in a coffee shop. Ethan looked at the photograph of Claire on the shelf. Then at Mia, then at Sophia. She told me to tell you thank you, Sophia said quietly. He blinked. Who? Mia. Before she fell asleep, Sophia's voice was careful. She said, tell Dad that Mom says thank you for getting out of the car. A pause. I don't know what that means. But she said it very seriously, and then she fell asleep, like she'd completed an important errand. Ethan went very still. His throat tightened. Do you know what it means? Sophia asked. Yeah, he said. His voice was rough at the edges. Yeah, I know what it means. Sophia waited. She didn't push. She didn't ask. She just sat beside him in the warm apartment and let him have the moment without requiring him to explain it. That was the thing, he realized. That was the thing she'd learned and he'd learned, and that Mia had known from the beginning, standing in a coffee shop in her orange coat with her serious eyes, pointing at a woman across the room with the certainty of someone who has seen something clearly. Some people you love teach you how to live, and the way you honor that is by actually doing it. By sitting down when it matters, by staying at the table when it's hard, by getting out of the car every single day, even when the weight of it is enormous, and walking into whatever comes next. Ethan Walker put his arm around Sophia Bennett. She leaned her head on his shoulder. Mia slept between them, her chapter book rising and falling with her breathing, completely at peace in the specific and unshakable way of a child who has arranged the world exactly as she intended. Outside, Chicago moved and breathed and carried on. And inside a small apartment on the northwest side of the city, a family that nobody had planned for, that had been assembled from grief and loneliness, and 4 impossible words spoken by a 4-year-old who saw the truth before anyone else was ready to hear it. That family held on to each other in the quiet. And it was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything.